Hey guys, it is November 4th and we've got ourselves a balance patch. If you guys have not watched my balance patch videos before, there are two things that I like to do. I like to always break down every change in both the competitive sense and also the Storm League sense. That way you can kind of get an idea of how it affects the majority of us and also how it's going to affect the games that you might be watching on Twitch. The CCL, the NGS games, the Heroes Lounge games, or like any of the Chili Mountain tournaments, right? So this way you get a better sense of about everything, where I know a lot of the other patch notes videos out there kind of have their focus. I try to always break it down so you can get a little bit of both. I also try to speed it up a little bit. While these are still long patch notes, we still have to go over and explain everything that's happening, so it will generally be a 20 to 40 minute video. That is my goal here. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is Anub'arak. Anub'arak's changes are mostly to level 20 talents. They want to make sure that Rewind is actually competitive and not just a talent you kind of have to pick. So the first thing that they've done is they've buffed Hive Master. Hive Master, they've increased its damage by a little bit, and it's healing by a decent amount. This is like a 40% increase in healing, which isn't going to change anything in competitive, but this could be a decent pickup in Storm League for those really long, drawn-out fights. If fights aren't going the way that you want, you picked Anub'arak because you had like a Burst Mage and you were like, I'm going to CC this target, and the Burst Mage is going to follow up and kill the target. Let's just say that hasn't been happening, and you haven't been getting bursted either. This could be a decent option for a map like Volskaya, where the fights might just go on for a long time. Then there's Cryptweave. I think this is an interesting change, but I would like to give them a different idea. So what Cryptweave does is what it originally does and still does is that if you cocoon someone and you stand within like a small, I think it's like a 3 range, if you stand within that small range, let me get out the crayons, I'll explain it. But yeah, if you can get within that that range and stay within that range, what you'll end up seeing is that, so let's say the cocoon is right here. If you're standing within this area, then it will increase, and yeah, I know what it looks like. It will increase the duration of the cocoon for another 6 seconds. Well, now what'll happen is, so for the initial 7 seconds and then the extra 6 seconds, you will be able to add 50 damage over 4 seconds when they leave that cocoon. Now remember something, this 50 damage scales with your level. So it's not like you're just going to be able to pull out a calculator and go like, oh, well, 15 times, 50 times 13 is 650 damage. 650 damage for a level 20 talent isn't that good. It's going to scale with your level. So that will actually end up being closer to like 2,000 damage when you get to the end. It's cool, but if you actually think about how Cocoon works, I personally don't think that this talent is going to be that good. And my reasons for this is purely because how you normally cocoon in a team fight is you'll look at how the team fights are going. If they only have like one frontliner, you generally in the late game are going to cocoon their tank and dive into their backline, and your team's going to aggressively attack their backline, kill a couple members of their backline, and then their tank's going to come out. Well, if their tank comes out and he has a bit of a damage over time on him, he's got a big enough health bar, it's not really going to matter, okay? Then the option 2 is if they have a healer that's been just keeping up everyone and it's generally long fights, then you'll cocoon the healer and you'll go and try to just rip through their front line really fast. If you are generally running like a front to back comp, that's how you'll normally play the next fight. That seems a little bit better. Healers have smaller health bars. The problem is that healers tend to be broken out quickly if you're going to run this playstyle. You're going to cocoon someone who's pretty far from you, CC their tank, and blow up their tank. By the time their tank dies, their healer's usually out of the cocoon. Which means that at most, they're probably only going to take about 1 to 2 seconds worth of damage of Cryptweave. So what I would rather them do with this talent is make it to where upon exiting the cocoon, you lose, I don't know, 30 to 40 armor maybe even just 25 for the duration you were in the cocoon. So it could be used for that first stage, but it's not used for the second stage. Because as it stands, if you're taking cocoon, rewind still works both methods better in the competitive scene. Now, this talent actually might be kind of cool in Storm League, just because you could cocoon like a tank against a team that doesn't have a lot of cocoon removal. Just chill around there and just CC the enemies for a little while. Or even if you cocoon like a Malthael or something, you cocoon a Malthael, someone who doesn't have a pretty big health bar, save a couple CCs, and then you can kill targets by yourself. I mean, really, anyone that you cocoon by yourself, you could kill. So if you're on a map that has a lot of split fights like Dragonshire, or if the new Warhead changes are approved, that might end up being in Storm League. So this will be a great talent for trying to kill people alone. I mean, I think if you have Burning Beetles and Rewind, you can still kill someone alone, but it's a lot harder. With this, you'll be able to easily get kills alone. So I do think this will be a decent talent in Storm League. Finally, they removed Hardened Shield, and they kind of put Hardened Shield back with a new passive, which that passive is gain 10% bonus maximum health, which is baseline, and 20 spell armor, also baseline. What I mean by baseline is once you take this talent, you just have that flat. You don't need to activate anything or do anything, which isn't technically what baseline means, but you get the point. So, again, I don't think this is going to make a huge difference. Competitive's still going to take Rewind, and I don't really think that this is going to be as impactful as either one of these two talents in Storm League. On to the next one, Mal'Ganis, increased health buff. We saw that Mal'Ganis was popular before his nerfs, and the biggest nerf to him was that health nerf. We saw him popular on maps like Infernal Shrines. So I would expect with this change, he would be popular in Infernal Shrines again, even potentially in the competitive scene. And if you're going to play him in the competitive scene, utilize his sleep. One of the combos that I personally like to run with Mal'Ganis is Kel'Thuzad, because you can sleep 2 targets, and it's super easy to chain 2 targets if they're sleeping. So you chain one, W chain the other one, and boom, you just got yourself... what is it? 1, 2, then the 3, 4 stacks, right? Every time that you do that, might be more than that. So, cool combo if you are in the competitive scene. Outside of the competitive scene, I think this puts Mal'Ganis back to where you could be picking him up as a tank in Storm League on the maps that he's good on, and do pretty good with them, too. His win rate was not bad. It's just that the other tanks were being used a lot more in competitive, so you naturally saw a lot more of those. So I think this is a good change to him. Just buffing an underutilized talent, nothing too crazy. Chen, freshest ingredients. These are all just buffing the underutilized talents. I think Deadly Strikes comboed with like his like later talent on 16. I mean, this is a pretty good buff. I'm no Chen player, but I like the idea of this talent being buffed more. Gift to the Ox, it's competing with some really tough talents. So I would say potentially this might be used in the competitive scene against maybe more mage-heavy laners. But I don't see it like beating out either one of those other 2 talents. Precious Ingredients, same thing. It's competing with some really major talents. But I do like the cooldown reduction moving up to 2 seconds, which is pretty big. It means you can use your trait more often. But again, naturally, unless unless like a build comes out with both this talent and this talent, I don't expect this to really change the competitive scene at all. I think Deadly Strikes might be interesting. Excuse me. I think Deadly Strikes might be a little interesting in Storm League, but I'll have to try that out and make a build video if it is actually good. With that being said, let's get into Dehaka. Dehaka Darkswarm is getting buffed. I think this is crazy. Darkswarm is already very good. But I'm okay with the buff. It's going to help out his wave clear. And it's also going to increase his damage. Level 13 and 20s are going to be reordered. Lurker Strain is... I mean, these are all underutilized talents that are getting buffs in here. I wasn't a huge fan of this because it competes with 2 other amazing talents. And I really don't think this is going to affect anything. Then we have Paralyzing Enzymes. Slow amount is being increased from 30 to 35%. I'm so sorry. I've got the hiccups. I apologize. And I don't think this is going to make a big difference in anything. 5% is not going to change the fact it's competing with very strong talents. Primal Rage, now this right here is actually kind of insane. So back in the day in HGC, the build that was used on Dehaka was store more essence, get more essence from minions, and then buff up your damage per essence. So if we pull out our calculator really quick, what we have is 1.25 times 60, and now you have a 75% damage bonus on your basic attacks. And so this build was used a lot in HGC because you could apply a lot of pressure from the global standpoint while the objective fights are stalemating. And then when the objective fight starts happening, you jump to the team, you contagion, you'd pull someone towards your team. And then that was all you did, because that was all that you had to do. Back in HGC, if you could pull someone towards your team that didn't want to be pulled, you won the entire fight. If you could land a good isolation on like their healer from diving into their backline, isolating their healer, you won the fight. And that's all you had to do on Dehaka. So his entire build was not about what Dehaka could do in a team fight. It was, he's going to land an isolation or he's going to land a drag and increase our chance of winning the team fight. Otherwise, he's going to apply a ton of pressure in the side lane. If we see the competitive scene, since this competitive scene is growing again, Storm League prizes or Storm Division prizes are better than they've ever been. There's more tournaments being ran in every division or every region. And CCL's prize pool is to the point that people are calling themselves pros again. And even CCL is calling their players pros because it's a considerable amount of money. Not only that they make, I mean, it's only like $50 a week or something that they make just for playing, but their sponsors are also going to be giving them money. And also there's prizes that they win. And the prizes are already at $5,000 and it hasn't even started. So yeah, I could consider them pro players. I mean, albeit very small pros, but yeah. So if that scene starts getting back up to where we're at HGC, this build will likely come back. This is not the build I recommend for standard gameplay. I think the W build or the race car build are much more impactful on your own, where I think this build is much more impactful if your team is doing everything perfectly and you just need to jump in, isolate someone, pull someone towards your team, and then for the rest of the game, you're just split pushing. But this is a huge buff to that build. It's going to significantly increase his siege damage. And then level 20 changes is survival. Cooldowns being reduced from, or sorry, cooldown reduction increased from 30 to 40 seconds, which will make his cooldown 30 seconds, I believe. So a really low cooldown on that. I think that's a great upgrade. And Apex Predator cooldown reduction increased from 35 to 50 seconds. I think that makes it a 25-second cooldown, which is great. So overall, I think that these are great changes to Dehaka. I think it's going to make him very strong. I already thought W build Dehaka was a powerful build that could heavily influence your Storm League games. And now I think this is going to make him a solid pick for those maps where you need a global, like Altarak or Cursed Hollow. I'm thinking Altarak doesn't have a lot of bushes, but Cursed Hollow for sure. Let's get down to D.Va. Rushdown. This is probably her most impactful talent that is being used in every single build. And with this nerf to healing, in the Pro Moves build, which is an amazing talent on its own, but Pro Moves really struggled in the matchups where Pro Moves couldn't get a lot of healing. So they would always take this talent and then they would be able to trade okay. I think this is going to be a significant nerf to those who run Pro Moves, but not a huge nerf to the other people. This is really the major thing that D.Va needed to get nerfed, and I like that that the Balance team decided to pick out this talent rather than just nerfing everything else about her. So I completely agree with this change. I always thought that this talent or this thing should be on a different talent than this, but whatever. Gazlowe. Gazlowe's been absolutely dominant since they gave those buffs to him, which I thought it was weird that they buffed, and that's my notification, not yours. Let me close out on that so we don't hear any more of those. Gazlowe, I thought it was weird that they buffed him when he was already at a 51% win rate, but they're nerfing his Q or his turret damage a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. Death Laser, they're nerfing that by an even smaller amount, or percentage anyways. Then we have Big Game Hunter, a pretty decent sized nerf here, to the point that if you're going auto attack build, I would start slowly recommending more auto attacks. Rocket Socket is a decent nerf. Again, I'd start maybe looking back into the WE talent, but it's still a very strong talent. It's just that when they've nerfed Big Game Hunter, they're also nerfing Rocket Socket. If you can't bring out as many turrets, then the amount of shields you're bringing out is also going to be reduced. Then we have superior schematics. Splash damage is being reduced. It's not even really splash. It's more like multi-shot, but still. And then also Arc Reactor, the cooldown reduction is being reduced from 3 to 2 seconds. These are pretty much just hitting his meta build. He still has other builds out there that are good. The Mage build is still very, very strong. And you also still have, like, in competitive, I would imagine people should be going the longer range and the higher damage on your stun, because you're going to be following up people more often, unless you need to win the lane. But most matchups, you don't need to, like most maps, you don't need to win the lane. You can just follow up your team's abilities when team fights are there. But your ability to win in like the 1v1 matchups is going to get more difficult when you can't just have a shield going all the time. But yeah, overall, I think these were good changes to Gazlowe. They buffed up everything about him, and then this patch, they've nerfed down the things that were actually devastating. So I think that's a pretty good shot, or a pretty good change. Leoric, I didn't think it needed any changes, but increased basic attack damage is going to make his wave clear better, because remember, he swipes, so even just this little bit. I think level 1, it required 5 swings and 1 swipe to clear a wave, and with this change, I mean, this is an extra 6, so, I mean, you get 6 times 4 is an extra 24 damage, and I believe your swipe, like, the amount of damage you needed was very small at level 1, because by the time that it's level 2, it's just the 4 swings and 1 swipe. So, I mean, very small threshold change at level 1, which probably won't make any difference in really any game, because you don't need a double soak at level 1, generally. Because by the time you soak the first wave, you're probably level 2. So, overall, pretty decent buff to the auto attack build. Not really going to make too much of a change to his other builds. Now, they're buffing W talents a decent amount, which Turk's going to love. But for the rest of the competitive scene, they generally just use Entomb and E-Build, or Entomb and Koreans tend to run Entomb and Auto Attack build, while the majority of everyone else runs Entomb and Damage Reduction build. And so this isn't really going to affect them in too many ways. And then you also have but, I mean, people who are running like the March builds, pretty decent buffs. I mean, nothing crazy, but decent buffs. Because it makes this talent a little bit more consistent. They are trying to buff underutilized level 20 talents, but personally, it's not really going to do it. You either upgrade March because you went full W build, or you're going to upgrade Entomb because it's game changing. That's really it. Malthael. Throwing Shade's getting a little bit of a buff. I always thought this talent was good for playing Malthael in a safer sense, because what you're giving up is the ability to win in a 1v1. But what people are mostly drafting Malthael for, unless you're drafting him to counterpick on, like, let's say, Braxis Holdout or Dragonshire, you're probably picking him just to double soak and to be able to take camps very quickly on his own. And if you're drafting him in that sense, or you're drafting him to, like, nano boost him, and if you're drafting him in any of those senses, this talent has gotten a lot better. However, this change is only on the initial impact, and it's only 2% max health, so it's really not that big. It's just more of like, it's enhancing this already safe playstyle, and it's already a really fun playstyle. Will it replace that talent level 4? Probably not. But will it replace it in certain scenarios? I think so. I mean, the competitive scene was already starting to use this talent in W build, when there was a nano boost, or when they just needed safer fights, and I really liked that playstyle. And I think this is a playstyle you can certainly still emulate if you don't need to kill the other if you don't need to kill someone in 1v1 situations. So let's say you're on Towers of Doom, you're going to be double soaking, you're not going to be fighting, so die alone isn't necessary. So I definitely like this talent. Memento Mori, this damage difference is not going to make a huge difference, especially since there are two amazing talents on the tier. If you're going to be doing more AoE damage with Q, or if you want to just be melting down more people with your W and the AoE W on 7, that's going to be so much more competitive than Memento Mori. Varian health buff, that's going to be great for tank Varian and just for every Varian. But remember that tank Varian, any health buff you do is also enhanced by his extra percentage that he gains while picking taunts. Lion's Maw, damage bonus is being increased, which means its healing should be increased as well. High King's Quest passive regen globe collection requirement is being reduced, so you can complete that a little bit faster. And then Demoralizing Shout, its cooldown is being reduced. Honestly, just buffing underutilized talents and also giving him a health buff. I think this is definitely what Varian needs. He's already one of the highest damage tanks. If you taunt a target and you take that W talent at 1, you can do like 50% of someone's health, which almost no other tank can do during their CC. So that's pretty incredible. And to have that tank... Fury, for example, one of the competitive players in CCL, has been doing a lot of taunt Varian and dominating in scrims. And so that's one of the things that, I mean, more health on it means that we're going to be seeing more Varians. I think that he's a decent tank to run in Storm League, but not a great tank to run in Storm League. He's decent because, again, if you're playing with like one friend that can follow up your taunts, that's enough to kill any target as long as it's a friend that, like Burst Mage or even a Rainer. But just running him alone, you'd have to ping your targets ahead of time and make sure that you're really taunting targets that are making mistakes that are already being attacked by your team. On to healers, Alexstrasza, abundance and preservation range is being increased. I was like, this is a weird change, but Blizzard's reasoning for it is that when they increased the movement speed, and she would do a W and start running away, she would actually outrun her W timer. Now they're making it to where she doesn't outrun her W timer anymore, which is an interesting change. If you're running away at max speed, you can throw your W at max range, which is, or just base speed. As long as you're not slowed and you throw your W at max range, you'll hit it. Which, as much as I've played Alexstrasza, I'm surprised I didn't know that. But now I know that. This change isn't going to make any major difference to Alexstrasza. I still think a good Alexstrasza played on her right maps should have a 70% win rate in Storm League. And in competitive, I think she's a good pick on her right maps. But what her right maps are is a little confusing to players. I may do another Alexstrasza guide. But yeah, that gives you kind of an idea of where Alexstrasza is. Alarak, Mocking Strikes. This was an underutilized talent. It's one that I've actually recommended in a really weird sense. Ever since they buffed his or gave him that level 1 talent where if you land a Q on someone, you start attacking faster and healing for the damage you deal. I've thought that Mocking Strikes, in combination with like his potential like slow talent on W, could be really powerful. Now they made it to where if you basic attack a hero, you lower your cooldowns, whether or not they're slowed or rooted, or silenced or stunned or whatever. And that makes it a little bit more consistent. Is it good enough to compete with the more bursty talents? Probably not in competitive, but outside of competitive, where the team fights get a little bit more chaotic, I think this is actually a surprisingly good build to pull someone in, use a Q, quickly kill one target, and pull them back in again in case like they have a higher health pool and you'll have low cooldowns. It's actually a surprisingly good build if the team fights are getting chaotic. One of the guys I was coaching, I was teaching him the solo lane build, and I was like, you don't see a lot of solo lane Alarax these days, so if you get good at this, you'll be able to just stomp people. And he did, like, as early as level 1 and his power spike around level 7, he was quickly taking out people left and right that were common solo laners. Like, he was dropping Chens because he was able to interrupt every drink, he was killing Urels because he's able to interrupt every heal, and he was killing Malthaels because Malthaels were silenced for too long, they couldn't heal. And it was surprisingly a good build against a lot of the meta solo laners. And he ended up leaving with like a 79% win rate over like 35 games. It was pretty crazy. So, is that a possibility to run solo lane Alarak and run something like this? Sure. Is this talent going to make a difference in competitive? No, probably not. Is that even a good build to run in Storm League? I would say it's less consistent, but if you get better at it than the opposing player is at their hero, then yeah, I think you can win a lot more than you lose. Azmodan needs a lot of help, and this right here is good. But the real problem with these talents is that you get interrupted way too much, and people leave your range way too much. I liked this build. McIntyre came up with a build for this where you summon 2 people and then you put your E on someone. It buffs up both of those, summons an extra one. They all get buffed up and they do a lot of damage, but it kind of has the problem of like, it has more problems than Zagara. Zagara's problem was that her damage doesn't go exactly on the targets you want it to go on. His damage is not just that, but it's also that he can be interrupted, so he doesn't even get any of those bonuses. Which is kind of an issue. So he needs a lot of help, and this is a good step, but he's going to need more than that. Falstad, Gathering, they're just buffing underutilized talents. Now, Gathering Storm, I stopped taking this talent even in Brawls, because at the end of the day, I would get 100 stacks in this, it would be an extra like maybe 200 damage, and it would take forever to get those stacks. And a lot of times, if I'm getting that many stacks, I'm probably going to win before anything even happens. In normal games, as Foul said, you should be double soaking for your team. You should be grabbing camps here and there. There's so many things that you should be doing that you won't have time to just sit and stack this talent. So this, in my opinion, I've said that this needs to be up to like 3 to even be close. But I mean, it's a buff in the right direction. Updraft, just buffing underutilized talents, competing with too many powerful talents on that tier, particularly Hammer Gains. Really, anything with outside of Hammer Gains is really hard to pick. Secret Weapon. I actually have been saying this talent is like a secret weapon. If you combo this talent with the level 1 basic attack that increases your damage by a flat number, and can increase your attack speed, what you can do is you can combo with Secret Weapon where you're attacking someone, and right as you're going to have a small period of time to attack, say they get stunned or something, you throw out your Q and you activate your bonus attack speed, and you will destroy almost any hero in the game. It is an actual secret weapon. What you lose is you lose Boomerang, which is a little bit of burst, but you gain burst in the late game from that activatable. You also lose Wave Clear. And that's the big downside. So if you're and if you need to stack your trait fast, you generally need that wave clear. So that's the major downside to it, is you're losing the ability to stack your level 1 faster for the chance of getting a huge amount of single target damage. So if you need single target damage, if you are the auto attacker for your team, I think that this talent actually is really good, but if you are more put in the mage role and you already have an auto attacker on your team, just go Boomerang, double soak, and do whatever you need to. But I actually do like this talent more than most people do. It's not a huge buff, but I do think that it's slowly moving it up to the point where, like, again, it's one of the highest like single target bursts in the game if you can do the secret weapon with the activatable. Then we have Hinterland's Blast getting a buff. I think the cooldown is the thing that scares me the most about this. If you miss a hero, you have a Mosh cooldown at that point. Even Mosh can lower its cooldown these days. So I do think this was also necessary, because if you did hit a bunch of heroes and you activated it again, you were out of mana. So good changes, but I mean, not enough to make Hinterlands better than Gust. Epic Mount getting a slight buff, which is good. Makes it, again, back where like the Dehakas is. Lunara, just buffing underutilized talents, really. The Q talent getting a radius buff, range buff, and then also the adjusted functionality on the accelerated contamination reduces the mana cost of the Noxious Blossom from 60 to 40, while at least one enemy is affected by it. You can spam Q, pretty much. I actually think this might make it competitive, because people are running that talent now where if you hit people that have 3 marks on them with your Q, it crits. And it could make this more of like a critty, bursty mage version of Lunara, rather than just a slow damage over time version. Yeah, it could make her good, especially since in competitive, we've been seeing more Lunaras being played just for the fact that she has Wisp. So she can prevent ambushes, she can prevent so many attacks. And so I could actually see her being picked up a little bit more in competitive after these changes. Even not necessarily for these builds, just for the usage of Wisp and everything. I actually really think that this could make a big difference in competitive. As far as your games, yeah, I mean, Lunara is actually pretty strong right now, and you can do quite a bit. You'll lose either the self-healing or you'll lose the extra siege potential, but the fact that you can hit more people and apply more stacks makes your level 7 more consistent. And the lower cooldown makes it to where you can do more DPS to single targets and burst, which is pretty good. So yeah, I think good changes for her. Also, increase the basic attack range by 0.5. Using this increases the basic attack. I actually go this build. I don't really like Lunara, so I'm not used to playing her the normal way. I go an auto attack build, and that's nice for me, but keep in mind that's not the build that everyone else is going, so that's why I don't really recommend it too much. Orphea. They're buffing underutilized talents like Q build, and they're nerfing W builds. And I think this is a reasonable nerf to W build, honestly. This is W trait build anyways. Not the normal W build, but like trait build. This is a reasonable nerf to trait build. I think this is really what needed to happen. The rest of these, I mean, new functionality for your ult. When you throw out Eternal Feast, you gain 1 chaos each time that it hits a hero. While Eternal Feast is active, the cooldowns of your basic abilities recharge 150% faster. That's pretty cool. I still think this is pretty cool. Like, if you combo it with like an Entomb. Entomb goes out, you throw out your ult, you know you're going to hit 3 times, and during that entire time, you're going to be able to spam abilities. I think that's cool. I could actually see maybe like an E build gain a lot of benefits from this, because if your cooldowns are going 150% faster in E-build when you have the E-quest completed, potentially both E-quests completed, but at least the cooldown one, you'd have like a 1.75 second cooldown on your E, which would be pretty huge if there's also an Entomb out. Because you'd be able to slow like their entire team and just land E's left and right, and kill whoever's in the Entomb because you'll throw out your Eternal Feast. So again, in Storm League, you combo this with a friend, or even in competitive, you combo this with a friend, and it's really good. Honestly, I still think that Orphea is an extremely strong hero for Storm League. I've been playing her on one of my Smurfs, and yes, I know smurfing's wrong, blah, 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 but I've been playing her on one of my Smurfs and sitting at a very high win rate. And I just go the trait build. And I'll sometimes go the ult, and I mean, I think she's good, and I actually think that she's good enough to be played in competitive with the right team. Sergeant Hammer, buffing underutilized talents. Maelstrom rounds is your activatable. Bonus damage is being reduced. Cooldown's being increased, but here's the additional functionality. Basic attacks against heroes while in siege mode reduce the cooldown of Maelstrom rounds. So, this used to be a little different. Now it's going to be more consistent. It used to be very inconsistent because you needed to hit, in order to have a high uptime on this talent, you needed to activate the talent and hit pretty much 3 people every time. Now it will lower its cooldown no matter how you're hitting people or whatever. But it's also only enemy heroes. So you used to hit a turret and reduce the cooldown while it was active, because you'd hit both walls and the sides of the turret. Now you can hit enemy heroes and just lower the cooldown of it, so you can increase the consistency. It's going to be picked a lot more in competitive than the other talents. But because it's a lot burstier in the beginning, it's going to be more valuable than the ambush talent initially, as long as the first 3 shots go off. And then over the course of a fight, you'll likely get a second one. So, maybe not likely, but in many cases, you'll get a second one. Barricade, W, cooldown reduction increased, again, buffing underutilized talents. Pulse, detonation core, cooldown, just underutilized talents. I don't really think any of these stick out to me too much. I mean, Hover Siege is still going to be better because you can move around. You're not just a sitting duck a mile away, and Hover Siege gets immediate value, where this, every time that you siege down, you have to wait a little bit, which gets better, but people just have to walk out of that range, where Hover Siege can eventually like answer that problem. Pulse, maybe it's good on like Volskaya, because it's like it'll eventually cover the entire area and you'll still be in a pretty safe spot. So maybe on Volskaya this is going to start being picked up a little bit more. This won't be picked up versus the other two talents. Mechanical know-how, shield amount increased from 5 to 20%. Basic attack damage reduced 50 to 30%, and no longer requires shield to be destroyed to gain bonus damage. That's really good. Am I crazy, or is that like really good? I feel like that's really good. I don't know. I'll have to potentially like look into this in a video. I haven't made a lot of Sergeant Hammer videos, so maybe a Sergeant Hammer video. Sylvanas, mind control. Honestly, it's getting really close. I said 30 seconds was the cooldown required to make this viable way back in the day. At 40 seconds and giving the 3 marks, I think it's almost worth it in like the W build to just take it every time. The problem with this talent is that Sylvanas is one of those heroes where she fits almost every team comp. And Wailing Arrow, I've said this to a lot of competitive teams that I've coached. I say like the majority of late game team fights are decided in the first 3 seconds of a fight. And being able to have a silence that lasts 2.5 seconds that hits most of the time all the important members is huge. So you're competing with an amazing talent, but I feel like in Storm League, this is approaching that point where it's already a long CC. It's longer than Taunt, and it's on a 40-second cooldown, and it's a ranged Taunt on a hero that almost has enough damage to kill the target that gets pulled anyways. This is interesting. I'm going to say a hard maybe on this talent now. Where I before was saying no. It's got a maybe. There's probably situations, and I think W build is one of them. But I don't know. It's interesting. That's all I'm going to say. I think in competitive, it's still probably not going to be the talent because Wailing Arrow is so heavily valued because of that 3-second thing. Dark Lady, cooldown reduction reduced from 30 to 25 seconds. That's just to compensate for this. And Withering Barrage Q, additional functionality. Withering Fire applies Banshee Curse. Wow. That's going to really help with your like initial... This talent was already the best for sustained fights. Now it's going to be the best for burst if you're going Q. Tychus quarterback, increased range, pretty straightforward. Battlegrounds, Warhead Junction is now going to get sewage tunnels, and let's see if my Warhead Junction game is still going. If it's not, then I'll load back in. It might just be over since I've been in this game for 30 minutes already, and I think 30-minute was the mark that structures started getting destroyed. I already lost. I'll hop back in that a game so you guys can see the tunnels and where they go. Let me leave, please. Okay, well, I'll do quit. I'll explain it, and then if I load back in... So what they've done is, on the map, so generally there's 3 lanes, right? What they've done is they've removed the boss that was down here, and they've instead put a vision, and the vision, I'll put yellow as vision. The vision goes something like this, and the vision goes something like this, right? So they've added a vision down there, and there was already a vision up here, and now they've put a sewage tunnel right here that goes to right here. And it allows you to move between these tunnels so that you can move around the map a little bit better. One of the biggest complaints about Warhead Junction was that the map was too big, and being a double boss map made it a little too snowbally. But now you can move from area to area and fight over different points, kind of similar to like Towers of Doom. So what I believe is that they're going to test this battleground out, see what everyone's opinions of the battleground is now with these, and they might bring it into the Storm League rotation next season. So we'll see if this was enough to make a major difference. I personally don't know. I'll see if I can hop back in another quick match real quick on Warhead, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. But for the rest of you guys, if you don't want to see what it looks like, thank you for watching. Feel free to check out all my other videos. Make sure to check out all the competitive things that are going on right now. HotS competitive scene has been growing quite a bit. So make sure to check out all of that. Just a quick recap. For the most part, the most important changes I would say from this that I've seen, D.Va, Gazlowe nerfs were pretty important. I think the Varian buff's going to go a decent amount. I think the Dehaka buff's pretty significant. I think the Lunara buff will make a change in competitive scene, just the way that she's being played. And the rest of these changes I don't think are going to be too big for anything, but I'm excited to see what they end up doing. But yeah, hopefully that helps out everyone. So yeah, let me grab on a pale horse so we can run over and see what these sewage tunnels do. And hopefully they open up in the early. Oh, they don't. So what time do they... Oh, no, they do open up in the early. So you go through the sewage tunnel, and you end up in the bottom area. And again, as far as cooldowns go, there's no cooldowns. There's just... It looks like a 1, 2, 3 second channel time that gets you from sewage. And this gets you within... I mean, if someone's channeling, remember that if they're channeling on one of these points... it's only I believe a 5-second channel, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no way to interrupt both areas, which is good. But if you have someone who can stall for a little bit, this is enough time. Because if you want to get from the bottom half of the map to the top half of the map, what it normally took. And this also has on a pale horse, so we can shave off 20% of this. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I mean, realistically, let's say if you need to take a couple seconds to mount, or you need to take a couple seconds to do whatever, if there's a boss fight going on and you have a couple people bottom lane, you're gonna get there probably as the boss is about done. As far as interrupting, you only really need to interrupt for about, I would say, 10-15 seconds, because you don't need to get from the bottom half of the map to the top. You'll generally just need to get from like here, like maybe a camp to here, or like you're fighting over this one to here. So what I think is going to be the most valuable on this map now, rather than going for globals and split pushers, I think is actually interruptible things like Li Ming, for example, who can interrupt channels, Junkrat, who can interrupt channels. I think those are going to be really powerful in this map. But definitely globals are still going to be very good, but I think they're going to be less good than they were before with these tunnels. I think the tunnel positions are really solid. So with that being said, that is everything for this patch notes video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is there anything you're excited about? Either way, feel free to check out any of my other videos. Make sure to subscribe, click that bell. I'm trying to push for 50K subscribers, so help me out with that. I'm not doing any giveaways or anything, because I always think those are weird, right? Someone's like, oh, I'll give away to one of my subscribers. It's like 1 of 50,000, and like half of them probably don't play HotS anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to do a giveaway, but maybe I'll do a giveaway on my Discord. You can, like, I don't know, something. But thank you guys for watching. Feel free to check out my other videos.